In 1995 I recorded Robert Lenkiewicz at Plymouth College of Art and Design doing a lecture on art. On the 5th of October 2017 I managed to salvage the Lenkiewicz tapes from SVHS. Sorry about the quality, but the curator was Robert Preston, and notice a young Nick.
There's much to say about aesthetic appreciation. Absolute beauty. But a dinner party where all the guests have been trying to describe what they think love is. Socrates describes how his teacher, Gottlieb, instructed him
that aesthetics received before and after the birth of modern philosophy. Ancient and medieval theories of beauty were undifferentiated from other fields of inquiry. Modern and contemporary theories are clearly defined, and beginning with Baumgarten, who in 1750 published his work Aesthetica. And that would have meant that he was trying to study aesthetics as an independent science. Aesthetics for the Greeks meant to perceive or apprehend through the senses. Baumgarten's term, Aesthetica, would have meant science dealing with sense perception. But clearly the concept of aesthetics as the science of sense perception is not what we nowadays regard as aesthetics. Baumgarten is obviously saying that beauty is the subject of this science of aesthetics. It is something which is sensorially perceived. Baumgarten, like Descartes and Spinoza, was a rationalist. So we would expect him to hold the rationalist views on aesthetics generally shared by all ancient and medieval philosophers, beginning with Plato and Aristotle, and that view was that beauty was objective out there. This flower was beautiful. My attitude to it made no difference. Beauty was objective, out there, like an energy force, like electricity, gravity. Objective beauty, being the proper object of the rational intellect, is a common doctrine of the great early thinkers. They felt that beauty was only intellectually knowable. But Baumgarten, extending the theories of thinkers like Descartes and Leibniz, came to the view that is rational, knowable. Use not, for example, sensory images, whereas essences Socrates less upon seeing a specialization, one soon wonders what, if anything, ties all these areas together. Looking at our subject historically can be helpful, but it is manifestly vast. The entire pre-Socratic period has as its most influential representative Pythagoras. He observed certain patterns and number relationships occurring in nature. We know that he was interested in the dependence on length of the pitch of a note emitted by a vibrating string. The explanation of the harmony of nature was for Pythagoras to be found in the science of numbers. He speculated that harmonious sounds were vibrated by the heavenly bodies as they described their celestial orbits, the music of the spheres. It was believed that number, ratio, was a secret. Geometric proportion, whether expressed in music, poetry, a building, or a universe, was a mirror, a subtle reflection of an abstract order. insight into God's brain, the Pythagoreans developed a taste for mysteries. Special significance was attached to certain geometric forms, in particular the 5 Platonic bodies. The last of these, known as the dodecahedron, and it was particularly popular with its 12 pentagon planes united. It was Plato's 5th essence symbolizing the heavens. The pentagram was used by the Pythagoreans as a symbol of recognition between members of their brotherhood, and was called by them health. That's what the pentagram meant at the time. There's a pentagon, and it was believed not only by Pythagoras but by a number of later Hermetic philosophers that the 10 points, 1, 2, 4, 5, are achieved by inscribing a line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The interesting thing is that another pentagon appears inside, upside down. And you can do that again. And there it is, reversed again. And you can do it again. And there it is, upside down again. Quite trivial so far. However, there was an ideal proportion which they called the harmonic mean, or the golden section. Leonardo da Vinci was interested in it. The Mona Lisa is constructed out of 7 of them. There are at least 11 of them in every Raphael painting. It's completely traditional right up to the 18th century. Come inside, I think. So if you imagine this is divided into 8 sections, the view was that the 3rd point in, the harmonic, I felt comfortable. Why it was produced so long. And that the greater part is the greater part to the lesser part, is found in every one of these ratios. Every single one of these ratios will have that proportion, even larger versions of it. The scale of this in relation to that pentagon, in relation to that pentagon, in relation to that pentagon, is the same proportion. The construction of the golden rectangle, probably the most popular form of this ratio, contains properties that have fascinated the creative for centuries, from the Parthenon to Leonardo, from Kepler to contemporary scientists. This is a fairly conventional geometric formula, it doesn't need to be invented. Leonardo da Vinci believed that branches came off the trees at a spiralic ratio directly proportional to this thesis. That snail shells had that kind of proportion. That waves came in onto the seashore at that kind of proportion. 13th century, the mathematician Fibonacci, it was called the Fibonacci series. 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5, 3 plus 5 equals 8, 3 plus 8 is 13. There's a ratio there as it builds up proportional to the same geometric formula. Pythagoras believed that mathematics is the foundation of the intelligible world and of the invisible world, spirit and matter. Proportions have, therefore, like ideas, an autonomous existence. They are the consequences of the arithmetical, geometric, harmonic means extolled by Pythagoras and Plato, and are derived from the very nature of number. It follows, according to this view, that every line, every surface, every volume, whose elements are arranged in conformity with these proportions, reflect the idea of beauty. Beauty would rest on objective foundations, independent even of man. When Pythagoras had proved his great theorem, he offered 100 oxen to the Muses in thanks for the inspiration and in the belief that he had the key to the structure of nature itself. I remember someone referring me to a book which describes a temple in Turkey, supposed to be there now. And as you walked in, it had a certain height and a certain width, and each of the pillars that supported the enormous ceiling were a certain width and a certain height. The texture of the stonework on the inside was of a particular character. The quality of the white stain was of a particular tone and a particular saturation. The spaces in between the pillars were of a particular proportion. And all of this was designed in such a way that whoever walked in, no matter what culture they came from, would start to cry. The claim was that the structure of the building, a building constructed in the 13th, 14th century, over a period of 100 years, would evoke this particular state of mind. Obviously, a preparatory state for worship, for humility. Okay, sounds a bit extreme and eccentric, and let's relegate the notion to poetry. But we're all familiar with the atmosphere of cathedrals and dark night skies and flat seas. We know that a particular atmosphere, a particular set of relationships in relation to our own scale evokes an immediate act. I remember when I was younger, I saw the engraving by Dürer called Melancholia. You may be familiar with it. He did a series of them. Dürer, German painter, remarkable draftsman and etcher. And there appears a typical magic square, which fascinated followers of number symmetry. We can see how each horizontal and vertical line adds up to 34, as do the long diagonals, so they all add up to 34, and if you divide it into sections of 4, each of those add up to 34. This patterning delighted many a philosopher, alchemist and magist. It excited them as an insight into the notion that the structure of matter and the mind of God were linked and could be measured. After Pythagoras, Plato and Aristotle made observations in the field of psychological aesthetics. They stressed the importance of ethics by concepts such as the beauty of virtue and so on. When I was 12, I was given a telescope, and I took it into the bedroom and I aimed it at the moon. But I was too frightened to look through, because there was just something so dramatic and powerful about this vast thing, looking so small in the distance. And I remember getting quite a distance away from the eyepiece and just walking past, looking, because I was frightened of the dramatic increase of scale, the change of scale. Suddenly you could see a tiny detail. It took me some time to just look through. And I had a similar sensation with this wonderful woodcut, which shows a pilgrim leaving the earth behind him, the sun rising and setting is way below him, even the stars are below him. He climbs the highest peak and somehow breaks through the heavenly spheres and sees the very cogs of nature working the grand system. Delightful early medieval image. The centuries pass. We find Vitruvius and St. Augustine, Philo of Alexandria is followed by the church fathers and medieval schoolmen. I'm talking about the history of beauty. All of whom evolved fascinating and eccentric aesthetic studies. Trinitarian aesthetics, Christological aesthetics, charismatic aesthetics, Mariological aesthetics, Virgin Mary cults, and endless theological variations. In the light of this range of aesthetic inquiry, touched upon before the dawn of the Renaissance, it is no wonder that the next few centuries produced. Instead, they deepened, enlarged, and enriched the various branches that had emerged from ancient and medieval times. As the centuries passed, specialized areas began to dominate. Sociological aesthetics, special psychological aesthetics, cultural aesthetics, new theories about light, color, form, acoustical aesthetics, therapeutic, phenomenological aesthetics, and so on. Here we come to the first essential feature of the history of aesthetic theory, and it is this: ancient and medieval thinkers writing on aesthetics were all aesthetic objectivists. They thought beauty was out there. Whereas a large proportion of modern and contemporary philosophers and aestheticians are skeptics, or aesthetic subjectivists. Early and medieval giants like Plato, Aristotle, Augustine, and St. Thomas Aquinas all trusted their senses and reason, taking the existence of beauty for granted, rarely trying to offer any proof for it. It was out there, in God, in nature, in numbers. With the dawn of modern thought, such speculations withered away. Baruch Spinoza, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, followed by an uninterrupted line of European and American aestheticians, doubted or denied the objective reality of beauty. They doubted this in a variety of ways, but shared the view that beauty was not necessarily out there. To be compared to the Apollonian, the eternal and original artistic power that first calls the whole world of phenomena into existence. And it is only in the midst of this world that a new transfiguring illusion becomes necessary in order to keep the animated world of individuation. If we could imagine dissonance become man, and what else is man? This dissonance, to be able to live, would need a splendid illusion that would cover dissonance with a veil of beauty. This is the true artistic aim of Apollo, in whose name we comprehend all those countless illusions of the beauty of mere appearance, that at every moment like worth living at all. These two drives unfold their powers in a strict proportion, according to the law of eternal justice. In the 18th century, it might have been called neoclassicism and romanticism. According to Professor Ornstein, now we might call it the right and left side of the brain. These dual always seem to be variations on the theme throughout culture. The Greeks knew it. That this effect should be necessary, everybody should be able to feel most assuredly by means of intuition, provided he has ever felt, if only in a dream, that he was carried back into an ancient Greek existence, walking under lofty Ionic colonnades, looking up towards a horizon that was cut off by pure and noble lines, finding reflections of his own transfigured shape in the shining marble at his side, and all around him solemnly striding or delicately moving human beings speaking with harmonious voices in a rhythmic language of gestures. To a man in such a mood, however, an old Athenian, looking up at him with the sublime eyes of Aeschylus, might reply, "But say this too, curious stranger, how much did this people have to suffer to be able to become so beautiful?" I'll leave it there. Children. I'm serious, I work hard. What do you want to ask me? Anything at all?
I want to ask you why you stopped with Nietzsche. Why did you come on into the 20th century? follow the exposition of aesthetic theories through the ages, but people have thought about it in the 20th century. Now I think of Wittgenstein, Foucault, Derrida. What do you think about what people in this century say on the subject?
It's become much more complicated, and because of that I did stop at Nietzsche. You're quite right. From Nietzsche on, everything changes because it starts becoming extremely specialized. It's no longer dealing with ideas as such. It gets broken down in terms of language itself. And people like Wittgenstein, and in a different kind of way, Derrida, and most of the what are now called deconstructionist thinkers, require such a level of initiation that it's very difficult to popularize the ideas. It's very difficult indeed. One tries, but it doesn't make much sense. So I prefer to leave it alone. Indeed, as Wittgenstein said at the end of the tractate, it's that which you cannot speak of, there we remain. Probably one of the most quoted remarks of the 20th century.
So do you think that thought has gone up kind of a blind alley?
Not at all. No, not at all. But like science, physics, biology, medicine, more sophisticated as technologies improve, and so does human thought. To the idea.
This video salvaged in memory of Robert Oscar Lenkiewicz. Thanks to Plymouth College of Art and Design, 1995, Brian Preston and Nick. This has been a Chris Summerfield video production 2017. You can contact me at ccsphoto12@hotmail.com, and if you can help to sponsor my videos, you can PayPal me at ccsphoto1@gmail.com. Thanks for watching the video. It's a lifestyle thing. It's valuable.